This is part 148 of SQL Server tutorial. In this video, we'll discuss how to use output parameters with dynamic SQL. Let's understand this with an example. Let's flip to SQL Server Management Studio. We're going to make use of this employees table in this demo. I'll have the script available to create this table in the description of this video and on my blog. So here is what we want to do. We want to retrieve the total number of employees count by gender. So for example, if we set gender to male, then we want male employees count. Similarly, if we set it to female, then we want female employees count. And we want to do this using dynamic SQL. And here is a query that can do this. Notice we have got two variables, at SQL and at gender. At the moment, we have set gender variable to male. And within the SQL variable, we have our dynamic SQL statement, select count of star from employees, where gender column equals whatever value we have in this gender variable. So at the moment, this is going to return us the male employees count. And then to this system stored procedure, sp execute SQL, we are passing our dynamic SQL statement, the parameter list, and the value for the gender parameter. So when we execute this, notice we get male employees count. And if we want female employees count, we simply replace this variable with a value of female. When we execute this, notice we get female employees count as expected. At the moment, we are not using output parameters within our dynamic SQL. To be able to use output parameters, we have to make a slight modification to this query. So the first thing that I'm going to do here is declare a variable. I'm going to call it @count, and this is going to be of type integer. Next, we need to initialize this variable with the count. So within our dynamic SQL query, select @count equals count of star from employees, where gender equals @gender. And we also need to pass it within the parameter list right here. So along with the gender parameter, we are also going to pass our count variable, which is of type integer, and this is an output parameter. So let's use the output keyword. And we also need to specify it here, and we also need to use the output keyword. And then finally, let's select what we have in our output parameter. When we execute this, we should get the total number of female employees count. If we want the male employees count, we simply set this variable @gender to male, and when we execute this, notice we get male employees count. And at the moment, we're using an output parameter with our dynamic SQL query. If we want, we can very easily convert this to a stored procedure. To convert this to a stored procedure, we use create procedure statement, and let's call the procedure sp employees count. And this procedure is going to have two parameters, gender and count. So let's move these two lines of code right here. And since these are parameters, we don't need the declare keyword. So gender is an input parameter, count is an output parameter. So let's use the output keyword, and then we use the keyword as begin, and within the body of the procedure we'll have all these statements. Since we are passing gender as a parameter, we don't have to initialize that with a value in the body of the procedure, so we can get rid of that line. This is the stored procedure body. Let's format that a bit, and then finally we will end it with end statement. So let's go ahead and execute this. So sp employees count procedure is created, and we know it has got two parameters, gender and count. Now let's pass male as the value for gender parameter, and let's set output parameter to 0. So when we execute this, we get male employees count. And if we want female employees count, we set the gender parameter to female, and when we execute this, notice we get female employees count. So the key here is to use this output keyword. Now let's see what's going to happen if we don't use this output keyword. Let's remove it and alter our procedure. Let's remove these parameters to be able to alter the procedure. The procedure is now modified successfully. Now let's quickly test it again. At the moment, we are passing 0 as the value for the output parameter, and when we execute this, notice we are getting that same 0 back. Now instead of 0, if we pass -1 and execute this, we get that same -1, and instead of -1, if we pass null, we get that null back. So here the output parameter is not working as expected because we forgot to use the output keyword. So remember, for the output parameter to work, you will have to use the output keyword. And here we have the dynamic SQL example with both input and output parameters. And always remember, the output parameter will not work as expected if you forget to use the output keyword. Thank you for listening and have a great day.